Make money, money, money.
You're about to get the uncut marketing strategies from the secret weapon of millionaire coaches and consultants. Welcome to the $1 Million Messaging Podcast, baby. Attention coaches, consultants, and service providers. This is the podcast for you.
Check them out, y'all. Check them out.
It's time for you to create marketing messaging that attracts clients who are going to pay you premium prices. Let's get into it. And now, here's your host, Cierra Say.
Welcome back to the $1 Million Messaging Podcast. I am your host, Cierra Say, aka known as the Coach's Copywriter, aka known as my partners like to say the best copywriter, living or dead. I should feel that way about myself, though, right? Listen, I just got done watching the Kanye thing, and I love Kanye, right? And I'm starting this episode off on a little bit of a tangent because I know when you guys just heard me say best copywriter living or dead, some of you probably like, oh, really? Like, what about Dan Kennedy? Anyway, long story short, one of the most powerful things I learned about Kanye that I kind of knew, but when he said it again in a documentary, he said, I am the greatest because I said so, and you should feel the same way about yourself. So yes, you are listening to this podcast from the greatest copywriter, especially when it comes to working with coaches and consultants and service providers. Ain't nobody colder than me. So grab your pen, grab your paper. We're going to get into it. Today, ladies and gentlemen, if you listen to the last episode, episode 2, on 3 reasons why you're not converting, the very first thing I mentioned in that episode was that you're speaking to everyone. Like, that's one of the top reasons why you're not converting. And today I want to talk about, and I'm going to take my time with this a little bit as well. I'm looking at my notes, my bad. But today I want to talk about the power of niching down, right? It is extremely powerful. And just to give you a little bit of backstory on how I went through the process and how I want you to look at it, because I totally get it, right? You're a coach, you're a consultant, you may even provide services. And in your mind, well, not in your mind, it may be a natural fact that whatever you're providing, everyone does in fact need it. Prime example, people who do credit repair. Everyone does. If your credit is bad, yes, you do need someone to repair your credit. So it's a given fact that everyone does need that service. For me, as a messaging expert and copywriter, yes, everyone doing business, whether it's online or offline, needs some sort of copywriting guidance. It's a fact. But when you are putting yourself out there as an expert in a certain field, and because you know everyone needs what you have, you still have to be strategic in choosing, keyword is choosing, exactly who you want to work with. I'm going to show you how powerful niching down is. When I first started my business, I literally took money from anybody who needed copywriting services. I didn't care if you was a coach. I didn't care if you was a consultant. I didn't care if you had a fashion line, beauty, whatever. If you needed an ad written, some emails written, if you needed a landing page written, and you could afford to pay me what I wanted to be paid, I was doing the project. And I always did the project well. But what happened was I noticed that all of the inquiries, right, were coming from all these type of industries, all these type of people. And it was really hard for me to figure out, how do I separate myself from everyone else? Because as a coach, one of the things you have to ask yourself is, what makes me different? And I noticed that in my space, most copywriters wanted to work in SaaS. They wanted to work in the financial industry or e-com. No one was dedicated to the information space, at least not anyone that looked like me at the time. So once again, I'm going over all of these people that I've worked with, right? And I'm like, okay, who gets the fastest results? It was always a coach or a consultant or someone selling information. Who did I actually like working with? It was always a coach or a consultant, because yes, I'm a copywriter, but at the heart of hearts, as a writer, I'm a storyteller. And when you're selling information, you have to be able to tell stories and evoke emotion, which we'll talk about in some episodes down the line. And then the third thing was, who can afford to pay me what I'm charging? It was always coaches and consultants and people selling information. So ask yourself, as you're figuring out when you're going through the process of niching down, ask yourself those 3 questions. Who can afford to pay me? Who do I like working with? Who gets results the fastest? Because the faster you can get a client result, the faster you can get a testimonial from them. And we all know testimonials do a number of things in your marketing as you're trying to attract more clients. So so that was kind of like my backstory of niching down. So the power of niching down, once again, it allows you to not only stand out in your specific space, it allows you to become the go-to in that space. And then if you're in a space where people have a ton of options, 9 out of 10 people are going to choose the person that's speaking specifically to them. So I'm going to use credit repair as another example. If you're doing credit repair and you're focusing on let's say you want to focus on entrepreneurs who are looking to grow their business, but they need to repair their credit first. If all of your messaging is geared towards, here's what a good credit can do for you as an entrepreneur. And when I say all of your messaging, meaning your content, your emails, your ads, when that entrepreneur finally decides they're going to hire somebody to fix their credit, they're more than likely to choose you because you're speaking to their specific problems than Joe Blow down the street who's trying to sign up anybody who has a 500 credit score. And I hope that makes sense. So the power of niching down is when you're in a space where there are a ton of options, people generally choose the individual that's speaking directly to them. And how you can create messaging to speak directly to them is using specific examples, calling them out. In all of my emails, I say, hey, coach. I know there are people on my list who aren't a coach, but I'm speaking to coaches. If you're here and you're not a coach, I don't know what to tell you. You can stay on the list, but be specific. A lot of times people are afraid to be specific in their messaging because they don't want to offend anyone or they don't want to leave anybody out. Newsflash, you have to leave people out. You have to. And the coolest thing about niching down is that when you niche down, you're able to go deeper versus wider. And I'm once again, you can go deeper versus wider. So as a copywriter and a messaging expert, I've chosen to go deeper by only focusing on high ticket coaches and consultants and some service providers, but mostly high ticket coaches. So I'm going deeper into niching down with the type of coaches I want to work with versus spreading my wings wider and saying, oh, I want to work with coaches, e-com, beauty, and fashion. So once again, you want to go deeper, not wider. Credit repair, you want to go deeper. I want to work with 6-figure entrepreneurs who are looking to leverage their personal credit to grow and scale their business. Versus wider, I want to work with anybody who got bad credit. That is the power of niching down. Niching down literally helps you become known as the go-to person in your space that works with a specific type of client. It is super powerful. The other cool thing about niching down is that once you niche down, and you'll hear me say this over and over, more than likely on this podcast, is that you naturally attract other people who you're not even talking to. But you position yourself as the go-to person, the expert, basically the deal when it comes to working with this specific type of person on this specific problem. Other people who don't fit that criteria naturally are drawn to you because of how much you stand out. And then it's your choice as to whether or not you want to work with them. So for those of you who are watching this podcast and you're either afraid to niche down, you're worried about missing out or losing people, don't think about any of those things. Niching down is the way to go. All right? Niching down is the way to go. There was something else I wanted to bring up when it comes to niching down, just to kind of show you guys some examples. Here's a perfect example of niching down, and a perfect example of how niching down doesn't necessarily exclude you from any additional revenue. Let's take brands like Gucci and Louis, for example. If you look like me, meaning we got the same skin tone, we all know that Gucci and Louis wasn't made for us. There's nothing in their marketing, nothing in their messaging that even, what's the word I want to use? That insinuates anything that they make is for us. Gucci and Louis have a specific ideal client, and their ideal clients are actually slightly different, but they have a specific ideal client. So we started buying it years ago. We're probably one of the reasons why it's as popular as it is. But when we started buying it and we started talking about it and we started, putting it in our music and showing it off on social media, you never saw Gucci or Louis adjust their messaging. Did they take our money? Happily. But they never adjusted their messaging. They're focused on the perfect person that they've created for their brand. And you have to do the exact same thing. Create the perfect person. Create the perfect messaging that goes along, that speaks to that perfect person. And whoever else comes along, it's your decision as to whether or not you want to work with them. But I wanted to use I use that example a lot because it's hard for people to wrap their minds around only like lasering in, right? They think sometimes the pool does get smaller, and there are very, what's the word I want to use? There are instances where we may make small adjustments, but that's done like with my private clients. There are instances where you may have to tweak the ideal client in order to make it make sense for how you're going to reach them, especially if you're running ads. But that is the power of niching down. When you niche down and you have good messaging, it also allows everything else to flow. So I know I'm talking to coaches, right? I know the pain points of my ideal clients. I know the problems that they have. It's easy for me to come up with emails. It's easy for me to come up with content ideas. Why? Because I'm talking to one person. And whether this person or that person or the guy behind me catches on to it, that's on them. But I know who I'm talking to. When you're trying to talk to everyone, it's harder to figure out what to say in the email. It's harder to figure out what examples to use in your content. It's harder to sit down and just it's hard to go live and just speak about what you want to speak about. Why? Because you're trying to create things that appeal to a bunch of different people instead of focusing on this one individual and allowing that one individual or whomever to catch on and then build a know, like, and trust factor with you so you can help them solve their problem. Niching down allows you to become even more powerful in your space. It provides clarity, and it allows everything else from a messaging standpoint to flow smoothly. A lot of my clients that I work with behind the scenes had an issue with this at the beginning, but now it's one of the things they thank me for the most. So the power of niching down. Listen, coach, do not play with it. We're in a space right now where there are probably 5 to 10 really good people, 5 to 10 people who are really good at what they do, and it's the same exact thing you do. The best way to separate yourself from them is to niche down and create messaging that speaks to your ideal client. Do not play around with trying to be a generalist, because being a generalist doesn't make you special. Be a specialist. Choose a specialty. Choose a special ideal client. Research that ideal client. Niche all the way down. Create the messaging you need to speak directly to them, and I promise you, the floodgates will open. If you need help doing that, listen, grab my Magnetic Messaging Playbook at magneticmessagingplaybook.com. It is a full resourceful guide of all of the tips, strategies, and tools I've used to help my clients create their ideal client, attract their ideal client, convert the ideal client, and nurture the ideal client if needed. There's also an amazing bonus recording featuring me and my brother Marquel Russell. And that is it for today's episode of the $1 Million Messaging Podcast. Listen, y'all, I'm not gonna lie, I'm still a little rusty when it comes to podcasting, but I'm definitely catching my flow. So do me a favor. I know I said that is the end of this episode, but do me a favor. I need you to like, rate, subscribe, review, whatever word you want to use this podcast, as well as share it. If you don't already, follow me on IG at CIERRASEAY. Tag someone in whatever clips you see from the podcast you've listened to and let them know how valuable this podcast is. If you are a coach and you find it helpful for you and you know someone else in business, share with them as well. Also, if you review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, you will be entered into a raffle to win a live messaging audit with me. I'm trying to decide if I just said live, so I guess that means I'm doing it live, right? We'll probably jump on together. I'll look at your funnel or your website live and provide you with some information and feedback to implement it, to get more leads, to convert more of those leads, and to make sure your messaging is tight. That is going to be my gift back to my podcast audience. I'm probably going to do probably like one every 10 episodes or something like that. But in order to enter yourself in the first one, go ahead and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. And once again, grab the Magnetic Messaging Playbook, magneticmessagingplaybook.com. I will see you guys on the next episode. Appreciate it.